Welcome everyone. It's gone 10 o'clock, so we'll kick off. My name's Scott Fennell. I am part of the Kinetics team, part of the client care, customer success and account management team. Today we are discussing a large cyber event that happened in July. The lessons we learned from the largest global IT outage in history. And on the line, we have our two experts. We have Bill, our Chief Technology Officer, and he's joined by Leon Friend, who is one of our business partners and supports us with a lot of the technology that we use. A little bit of housekeeping mentioned earlier, we are recording it. We'll present this and provide the edited version of this on our website in a few days' time for anyone who wasn't able to attend or would like to share it with a colleague. So, yeah, already done the housekeeping. Your microphones are muted, but feel free to chat and ask questions. Please let us know. We'll try to answer those towards the end, and we'll get cracking. A little bit about the event, what happened. So 19th of July, there was a major event. The reason I've got this up here on the screen is I wake up on Friday. It actually started to happen, but I snuck home and had a quiet night and got up early to watch Formula One and noticed that there were strange IT things happening in Formula One in the wee hours of the morning. They didn't really discuss it in too much detail. And then as I opened the news, it seemed to be that New Zealand was all about the IT outage, and it was very personal to me. I had two family members and traveling to Christchurch too, so I was a little concerned how they were going to get about. And then thankfully, none of our clients were impacted. My role, I reached out to a number of our clients just to check on their systems. And then as we worked out what was happening, we were clear. But Bill and Leon, keen to hear your perspective on what happened.
Well, thank you, Scott. And thank you, Leon, for joining me this morning. We're in Sydney for IT Nation. Yeah. Leon here is a presenter at IT Nation, and he's got a really busy schedule. So he skipped breakfast to join me this morning for this webinar, and then he's got to go off and be presenting to, I don't know how many hundred people are turning out for this event.
But it's something like just over 600.
Yeah,
it's a lot going on over the next couple of days.
Right, yes, a lot happening. And yeah, the big outage on the 17th, I think it was. Myself, I was pretty well much unimpacted because I live a quiet life. I was sitting at home watching the news feeds and what was going on, and but because I'm just watching TV and not doing anything, I'm going, oh, it doesn't seem that bad to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I think younger ones going and out and trying to pay for their meals, and everybody's tapping and that not working. And I had a couple of weeks ago, I was at an event with talking to a guy, also an IT manager, and he had been on his way home and had stopped off at the supermarket going through the self-checkout. He said he had just paid for it and the checkout blue screened. And as he turns around and walks away, he had the experience of walking up between all the self-checkouts. And as he walked, each one went bang, bang, went down. So I think you might have been the cause of it. And the next thing to happen, of course, was the cell phone went mad.
Yeah.
Did you have any?
Well, I was lucky. I was traveling the week before and the week after, so fortunately I didn't get caught in an airport, which I've had happen before with a IT outage. And a little bit like you, I had one of those really busy days where I was working from home and it didn't directly impact me. And because I was so busy, I wasn't looking at the news, so I didn't it took me a little bit to actually pick up on the fact that it was going on. Over here in Australia, it impacted lots of people in different ways. That checkout one, it's like everybody's going, because we've got a bit of a movement over here where it's that move against the cashless society. And the really strange thing that a lot of people experienced with this outage was that they couldn't pay with cash, but they could pay with credit card. So it was because the registers were down, so they could do they could pay by credit card using PayWave or the tap. But the register wasn't actually active, so they couldn't actually process the cash payment in the register. whereas they could put the number into the card machine. So it impacted lots of people in lots of different ways.
It was very confusing at first. There was all the reports of blue screens. Now, probably everybody knows blue screen of death, but basically your computer just goes, hands up, I give up, I'm going to shut down.
Yeah, these days it gives you a nice little smiley face. Right? It used to just literally be a plain blue screen, right?
Yeah, I think it goes,
yeah.
So we had that happening. At the same time, I was getting reports that Microsoft was having issues.
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of people, I was going, oh my gosh, there's a major global hack going on.
Yeah.
And I think that was every IT guy's first response.
Yeah, I think so. It's like everybody's initial response was there's a huge hack of some sort going on. Thankfully, it wasn't that. That doesn't necessarily lessen the immediate impact, but it could have been, I guess, so much worse.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people didn't realize, and this is one of those interesting things, because events like this have happened numerous times, since we've had computers, basically. This is probably the broadest impacting one. And so, and what a lot of people didn't realize is like how much back-end protection was happening with the CrowdStrike tools, which is why it impacted a lot of people in ways they didn't expect.
Yeah. So just or actually really get into that, the Microsoft one was confusing. That just pure coincidence. I understand they were a victim of a denial of service attack.
That came in as well. Yeah.
And
piling on the fun. Why not?
Yeah. And that was really odd because Microsoft have this denial of service. So that is when somebody literally tries to imagine back in the days when you had a call center, it is literally somebody tries to flood all your lines so that legitimate calls can't get through. They have protection in place for that, but they had misconfigured that protection and it actually made made it worse.
Yeah. So many moving parts.
That's right. So it really did surprise me how widespread the issues were from CrowdStrike. I remember sitting there and I was reading reports and they're saying it was the biggest event in history, and I was thinking, WannaCry, I thought that was so much bigger. But when I look at it, WannaCry took down, they say, about 230,000 PCs, and this affected 8.5 million.
Yeah.
And so many of them critical to running companies, running in that back end, airlines, banks, supermarkets.
Yeah.
It was, I think we had one smaller client that was running this, but quite distributed people all over the place. And my experience from them was about half of all their PCs, now 15, about half of them went down within just a matter of about 2 hours, I think it was.
Yeah.
Very, very quick.
Yeah, and I think that's really the learning here was, I've been doing this for a long time, and this isn't, I just want to sort of flag, that this sort of thing has happened many times in the past. But the scale of the impact has been much smaller because it's been very limited to a number of, a specific range or model of laptop or something like that. So it's like some strange driver conflict sort of thing. This is the first time we've had one that's been quite broad.
Yeah. So what actually was the cause? What happened?
Well, this is where I don't want to sort of pile in, but the reality is that it was, if you look at the root cause analysis, which I think you're going to share with people, it turns out to be a relatively simple programming error was the cause.
Yeah.
And it slipped past the testing. So something that should have been a simple programming error that should have been caught in a stage testing process managed to get through that stage testing process in some way, shape, or form. So
if you're interested, Scott is going to post into the chat the link to the root analysis report that CrowdStrike has released on this. Yeah, I'm fascinated to look at it. I'm not a developer, right? I used to be a
developer, so I look at it and go, hey, this is probably something that shouldn't happen. But
that's right. When I talk development stuff, that's a great way for me to fall asleep. But literally, from my understanding of it, the code expects to find 20 lines or 20 references to what it needed to do. And there was a 21st one. And when it got to that, some parts of the application realized there would be more than 20 and some didn't. And it just caused the whole thing to crash.
Yeah, and that's where there's two things that should have happened there. One is they should have had the balance check to catch it, and then they shouldn't have done it in the first place. Think of it as, you have a tall step ladder. And on the tall step ladders, they say do not step on top. Right. It's basically that's what's happened is like with the 20 of the 20 safe steps, and the 21st is that one that's at the top that's not safe.
Yeah.
And it's like they trod on the top step and the ladder collapsed.
And when you read that report, it's interesting that I think there's 6 recommendations in there, and 5 of them are just purely about better testing.
Yeah. So and I think that's the thing is they had a testing process. It snuck through somehow. And having worked at some other vendors that have had this in the past, because this is not a new thing, the end result is always better testing, better staged rollouts, right? And the staged rollout becomes important because that means if something gets through and there's some weird, strange driver conflict or something that's going to cause a problem, a staged rollout means that the impact is not as broad.
Yeah, now that was the 6th recommendation they had. So basically what has happened in this case, and you can kind of understand, this is security. If there's an update to security, do you want to wait? No, you do really want it to, I'd sooner have it today than tomorrow and be at risk. But they do go, and they were going, here's this update, everybody takes it at the same time. And I think it's reasonably common practice across the industry that you're still going to push things out quickly, but you kind of go, here's one group, here's another group.
That gap doesn't have to be immensely big, right? But it just means that if something starts to go wrong, you got a chance to stop it before. And usually the staging goes, it's a really small group, a slightly bigger group, slightly bigger group, slightly bigger group, everybody, right?
It didn't take long for people to realize there was a problem and for them to react. I think it was only out there a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have taken perhaps too much of a pause there.
No.
So we think that sort of, I understand this could happen to anyone, and I want to be careful about my language.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing here is what we're trying to do is talk about the learnings, right? So this is not about they did the thing wrong. This is about something happened, and it could have been anybody, right? We've seen it with lots of different update services, all these sort of things. And I know Bill, your team does a stage testing process for most things they go through, right? Because of these sorts of challenges. Because the reality is some of this is outside of our individual control. So it's outside of you as an end user. It's outside of your control. Some of it's, with Bill and the team, it's outside of their control, right? So we got to think about the contingency planning and how we handle it.
So now, for those of you on the call, Leon works for ConnectWise here, and ConnectWise has a number of products, and we use some of them, but not all of them. So I think when we go into this, we're going to have different methods that we use to deal with this. But how does ConnectWise, because you do patch management, push it out, either we trust totally what our suppliers are giving us, bang, push it out, or we have processes. I know we have one, I'll talk about ours, but what does your team do for their patch management?
So with our remote management tools, with the OS patching, so I'll talk about operating, patching Windows itself. So we sort of, because we're a tool that you guys would use for argument's sake, it's sort of we work in 2 ways. Is we build and maintain a list of those patches that Microsoft have. There is like a recommended process for it, and then depending on the tools, it's like either you as the customer or you as the managed service provider would approve those patches to be deployed. So we're not just letting them roll out, right? Now, in some of our environments, we have our own operation center, a network operation center. They have a pool of about 400 or 500 odd various computers that they've acquired over the years, right? And they actually go through a testing process. So they roll out those Microsoft security patches on those machines and test them. And based on a testing cycle that is monitored by people on real computers, not just virtuals, we will say, yeah, this caused a problem or not. And then in our management tools, you can either say it's only approved by me, Bill, the managed service provider, or it can be approved by the ConnectWise NOC or me, Bill, the managed service provider. So really what we're doing there is that we're effectively doing that stage testing. And we, with those security patches, depending on the severity, we do it over a week to 24 hours. So
yeah, so when I've gone out to a lot of companies and said, actually, can you just reaffirm to me the process you go through? And you kind of judge from what they tell me they do, what they must be hearing took place. And one of the common things that they're coming back and saying to me is during the testing process, they have a manual verification of the results. So I'm making a bit of an assumption here. Perhaps the good testing in place, but it's all automated and something falls out of the bounds of automation, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get an error if it doesn't actually see the result. So that was a real common one that I've heard, is that manual verification of the testing results before it goes out.
Yeah, I think my experience, if I separate it out a little bit, is because we've been doing this for a little while. You can tell from the grey beard, right? From a customer, from an end user point of view, which is most of you on this call, you tend to just, unless you've got a managed service provider like Bill and the team, you just tend to let Windows do its thing. And then when it goes wrong, you have no idea what to do. And I think that's really what we're trying to get to today, is just sort of have a little bit of a plan. It doesn't have to be a big, complicated plan. You're already using a managed service provider. So you're well on the way, because I know Bill and the team have a plan. But you need to understand what that is and interact with it.
Yeah, I think it would be a worst case scenario to have something that affects every computer be so badly wrong. Now, we know that Microsoft have done this from time to time.
It happens.
Admittedly, it's not that there's a problem in the update, it's the scale of the impact of it.
Yeah.
Normally when we have a Microsoft problem, if you've got 2% of PCs that are failing, that's a big issue, rather than in this case 50 or 100%.
They also go through a staged process as well.
They do.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit lucky here, I think, because Microsoft released their patches in their time zone. So they go out in their time zone where they do it. In effect, our testing market is the US before we wake up.
Yes, before we wake up.
And they hit us. So I know that for us, for our Microsoft patching, we just have a small delay of a couple of hours, and we know that that's enough time for there to be a problem. And by the time we come in the morning and we're having a look before stuff is released, Microsoft have in the past actually withdrawn that patch. So sometimes just that small amount of time can make a big difference.
And then we do that testing cycle, but if we hear Microsoft's got broader issues, we obviously that allows us to shortcut that testing cycle sometimes.
Yes. Of course, this wasn't a Microsoft issue, but
no, we're talking about the process and the impact, not the specifics. Yeah.
So, like, if I'm a client, I'm going to be asking, so that's great. What can I do as a client? What can I do to protect myself? I mean, other than trusting IT people, and one could say, here's proof that you shouldn't trust IT people.
Yeah.
What should a company do? What can a company do to try and prevent itself, or at least be able to manage or recover?
I think a lot of these are really common steps. And so this is what I'll say, and in New Zealand we can look to there's some allusion to some of these things in like the CERT-NZ critical pen, that sort of stuff. But really, some of this comes down to just you third party risk. So it's like, make sure you're using legitimate software that has support contracts, all these sorts of stuff, because that allows you to sort of try and keep control of it, because you don't want to be dealing with unknown risk. Right. So know what you're using, know what you've got. And then understand the plan, because when something goes wrong, because inevitably something does go wrong, doesn't matter what we're doing, whether it's driving a car, sitting at home watching TV. It's like I was watching TV last night, and my wife's going, do not play with the internet, because I've got this really show that I'm really enjoying, I want to watch. And of course, the the TV channel had a glitch partway through the show, and I got the blame. Right? I'm like, no, I didn't touch. But the point is have a plan, and it doesn't have to be a big complicated plan. And, it's like it might be call Bill, right?
Or call Scott
or somebody, right? And understand the basics and have that documented and have it somewhere where you can access it even if you don't have your computer, right? And because that plan can always get better, right? But at least if you got a plan, because I think one of the biggest challenges we had with this particular one with the CrowdStrike is that it really required like physical interaction with the computer, right? So that makes it a bit harder for people like ourselves to help you, because we need you to physically do something before we can help. Once we get you to do something, we can help from there on, but we needed you as the end user with the computing device to do something. And that's if you're just sitting there waiting for us to do something back end, you're effectively never going to get anywhere, because as far as we know, your laptop's turned off and you're on holidays. I we wish you were on holidays.
I'm not going to claim to be an expert across all the applications that are out there at all, but it was interesting looking into this. So it kind of took place because the issue happened in the kernel. So right in the core of Windows.
Yep.
And if I go back to 10 years ago, every AV vendor would have said, "Oh, we work right at the kernel, at that core."
It's actually really important for them to work there.
Yeah. But I notice now that a lot of EDR products are saying, actually, we don't work like that because of that risk.
Yeah.
So there's been a big shift.
So there's sort of a couple parts to that. And if we unpack that really quickly, is that there is a number of things. They monitor it at the core, at that kernel, and they do things at that kernel level because that allows them to literally see everything and interact with everything. And as we're doing
before you've logged in Windows.
Yeah. So it allows right from the very first instant Windows starts to boot, they've got visibility of stuff. And that gives them a huge capability when it comes to protecting your environment. But with that becomes a lot of risk. And that is right. A lot of endpoint security vendors, and I'm sure CrowdStrike are looking at this as well. Over the years, they've been looking at like how far where can we step back from the kernel?
Yeah.
Right. Because the more they interact with the kernel, the more challenging it is. Now, we're seeing, there was some press and stuff from Microsoft and all that sort of stuff. It's like, but the reality is people are going to need access to that kernel for various reasons.
Yeah.
But we have to trust that those people, when they do it, this comes back to using legitimate software that's with support contracts and supported and all that sort of fun stuff, is those people, if they are doing kernel level stuff, they need to be really careful and really strict and do the right testing things. In this case, unfortunately, something slipped through the cracks. But
so for an end user, that does mean that when we're talking about, what's the risk factor? Well, your punter drivers don't do that. Your Adobe Acrobat, a lot of things don't need that kernel level access.
Yeah.
So the opportunity for updates for those to have the worst part of this, which was that you couldn't even get into Windows to fix the problem.
No, you had to do
that risk isn't there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned 13Z. Of course, here in Australia, you have the Essentials 8. But I went back and looked at that again, and they're adamant. What are the things you should be doing? Back everything up. And the other thing, know where your data is.
Yeah.
It's people go, well, my data's in the cloud, but actually, how many of us actually have something sitting on our laptop? So if everything's only sitting on the laptop and the laptop dies and you aren't backing it up.
Yeah. So, and this is one of, and I can give you sort of an interesting anecdote, because I do the data protection sort of side of things as well. And that is, everybody goes, I've got everything in the cloud. I just need to back up my Office 365 instance. I could not, emphasize enough of like, do they really? And usually the biggest offender, and I apologize if this is you, is the owner or senior manager in the business that's just working on their laptop. They save everything to their desktop or their hard disk, and then when and I'm just going to say your hard disk is going to fail at the worst time. right? Because I don't know how many times I've been doing this, and the CEO's laptop has died with a big presentation in an hour's time.
I apologise if you're on the call. I have a very dear friend, a CEO, and his desktop is just, there's not a spare bit of space, and almost everything is a PDF of a product that he supplies, that he has downloaded the PDF for. And I kind of go, PDFs, what would it matter if you lose those?
But
that's
and other stuff.
A lot of hours of just to have got all that data.
Yeah, but often it's like a spreadsheet that's got numbers critical for a board presentation or something like that.
So you can't manage, you can't help if you don't know where your data is.
No, and from a data protection is, if you've got people in your business that are like that, there are ways that the team can help you back that up, in addition to what they back up in the Office 365. So, but this is about having a plan and understanding what your exposure is. And I think that's the really key here today is, these things happen. It's a little bit out of our control, but there are things we can do to minimize the impact, or when something happens, how quickly we can recover, or and there's an appropriateness into the how much spend and time and effort we put into that's got to make sense to you guys.
And that legitimate software stuff. I mean, even in the last couple of days, another warning come through about websites that are trying to trick people to download. Here's your Acrobat reader. Here is that software you want. I've Googled it. It comes up first on my search list. I click on that. I just assume it's a legitimate source.
And that Google and search thing, it's like, check where you're going. I've had customers that I've dealt with in the last 12, 18 months where they've, instead of going to their bank site, they've put it into the search bar, and the first link was actually a malicious actor, and they've actually ended up with their bank accounts being empty because they just didn't go straight to the bank's website. So it's all about due diligence, due care, and honestly, if you're, it's also about education, because if we don't teach your staff. If you don't teach your staff to recognize that that's not behavior they should do, they should go to the legitimate sites, or how to recognize a legitimate site, then honestly, we can't really expect them to do much better, right?
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left, guys.
Cool.
And you got very engaging. Appreciate all the content, especially at an early time on Sydney. If anyone has any questions who's on the chat, on the webinar, please type them in. I had a question around endpoint detection and response, and the modern security models that we have with things like CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, and modern EDR that's almost operating in a near real-time environment where it's trying to deal with threats in the quickest possible way. Do you see that model changing following SentinelOne, or do you see this really just enforcing diligence around that? Does that make sense?
I mean, where we are now with those EDR tools like SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, even Microsoft EDR, where we are now is an evolution of where we started off, back in the 80s, right? It's going to keep evolving, and it will keep getting better. I think, some of the direction we've been seeing is they have been able to step back a little bit from the kernel. But the reality is that the where we are with the EDR tools is really important and really critical, because if I think back to the 80s when I was doing this, it's like, hey, I caught this piece of malware. Yay, awesome. And so it's like, what did it touch? What did it do? Where the EDR comes into it is now we can see that it came from here, it did these things, it touched these files. So it gives us an immense amount of visibility, and and it allows us to do very targeted, appropriate responses. So it's where we are. It's going to continue to evolve. I think what we'll just see is that people like Microsoft and Apple with Mac OS and the Linux, they're going to probably get a bit stricter with how people interact with the kernel. And we're also going to see a lot of these vendors continue down the path, because this is not a new path for them, to step back from that kernel, so that the impact could be lessened.
If I put it in this context, so 8.5 million PCs went down. The cost at one point was, they were saying a week in that it was going to be about $5.5 billion US. But a week ago, I heard it was $1 billion just for Australia alone. That's a lot of PCs and a lot of money. But this is security software. A lot more money is lost by people that don't run this in any given week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
This is,
Good
we're
question. Good
talking
point.
a $1 trillion industry.
Yeah, and that is exactly right. So that the other point side of this is not having it means that you are, you're gonna have a problem, and really soon.
Sure.
So that's the other side of the coin, is we can't afford not to. And this is about the appropriateness, and if you're on a board of directors, or in management and all that sort of thing, this is about taking responsible steps to protect your business. And EDR is one of those tools that is extremely effective. Is not particularly expensive. Don't get me wrong; it's not the cheapest thing around, but it's like in the overall scheme of things. And if you have challenges, like if you're going through cyber insurance or any sort of compliance regulations or anything like that, you'll see that they're basically saying you've got to do this.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have another question. We have another question from Dries. Morning, Dries. It's been a while. Do we think Microsoft is more vulnerable than other OS like Linux and Mac OS? But reflecting on the fact that Microsoft are used far more than the others too.
Yeah, I think it's probably more of that percentages game. I mean, the reality is platforms like Mac OS and many of the Linux ones have been much tighter on their kernel access than some of the other ones. But there's also the fact, I think, Microsoft, probably a little bit tongue in cheek, they made a comment about, some EU regulation many years ago made them open up their kernel to third parties and stuff, which is a bit of a moot point, didn't really actually help the discussion at all. But the reality is the nature of the way Microsoft worked is a much more open environment, generally gave more access to people, and I think that they're going to tighten that up. Yeah, and
you've got more there's more tools for Microsoft, I guess, so more opportunity, and like say volume as well. If you here we're talking about something accidental. If you flip that and say, what about the targeted attacks? I know because Macs you can see Macs are growing as a percentage of devices out there, and so every week I'm hearing more and more attacks on Macs, because the bigger the percentage of the market, the better the return for your effort.
Yeah, and also it's interesting because Mac OS users tend to be seen as higher value targets because they tend to be seen as more affluent than Windows users. And I mean, this is one of those interesting ones because really, one of the very first viruses actually ever written was actually for a Mac, not for Windows. So Mac is historically, and they have lots of arguments, but the reality is Mac is targeted, Linux is targeted, so it doesn't matter what platform you're using, you need to do things to protect it.
Yeah. If you're not keeping up to date, if you haven't got protection, the risk doesn't change.
Very good.
All right.
Well, we have used our half hour, and I think the information you've shared and the conversation you've had has been fantastic. So I appreciate both of your input. Thank you very much. I haven't seen. Oh, I do have one more question. So thank you, Dries.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I saw. I think I just looked at the Q&A. I think we already answered that one. So cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Brilliant.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. I hope everyone has a great week and safe travels, Bill and Leon. Cheers.
No worries. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.